Hi everybody, my name is Larsen. Do you practice comping, and is what you're doing actually helping you comp better? So for me, when I'm comping, this is about interacting with the soloist and locking in with the rhythm section. And it's really about one of the things that I love the most because it's about playing with other people. What a lot of people miss about comping is that comping has a function in the music, and a part of that function is conveying a groove or a feel. So in this video, I want to talk about how you develop that and come at it a little bit different perspective than just thinking about the voicings and the rhythms that we are playing, but really about how you train your ears and train your fingers and your inner groove to play comping a lot better. The biggest part of my working life is spent comping behind other people, and I get called for a lot of gigs and for a lot of other things because I can comp. So you do want to take this seriously, because most of the time that you're going to spend playing is actually going to be comping behind other people, and you want to be good at it because that's what's going to make them call you. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, about improvising over chord changes, checking out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. If you're comping something on a song that has a groove or a certain feel, then you have to keep in mind that it's important that your comping also conveys that. And that means that you have to hear the groove inside. You have to have an idea about what that feel is, and you have to have a really strong idea about it, because everything you play has to relate to it and also has to convey it. You can probably hear it if you start to record yourself comping with a metronome, where you're the only one really conveying the groove and the metronome is only there to tell what the tempo is. And that's the best way to check this. So the first step in getting this better is probably to start listening to people who are good at comping. So just to give you some examples of this, two people that I really admire a lot for comping, that I've checked out a lot also, and that I also really consciously listen to how they comp to get some inspiration and some ideas, are Wynton Kelly and Oscar Peterson. So if we check out how Oscar Peterson is comping behind Louis Armstrong on Cheek to Cheek, that sounds like this.
When we out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Yes.
What you want to notice here is that he's comping in part quite freely, and then there's a part of it where he's really sticking to that same pattern that's sort of all through the song. That's probably part of an arrangement, so he's... And it's not so important exactly what he plays. I think what you want to listen for is really just sort of the general idea, and that may take a little bit of training and getting some idea about, okay, what is he doing? What you should notice, for instance, is that he doesn't actually play that many long chords. He mostly just plays short stabs in between. He doesn't get in the way of the soloist, and he's just sitting behind trying to supply the groove and just in a clear but subtle way convey the harmony. With this great example of Wynton Kelly playing behind Miles Davis, you can hear that there's also a lot of repetition. There are some riffs that he sticks to. Again, he's using rhythms. It's not too much about what chord voicings he's playing. It's much more about trying to play some rhythms that sit well in the groove and that are nice for Miles to play over. And the idea of using motifs and repeating figures is actually really useful for this, because in that way it's easier to convey a groove if you have an actual groove that you're playing, so that would be a repeating figure. And it's also a lot easier for the soloist to deal with what is going on under him if it's a little bit predictable. So the trick is really to work with things that are predictable in your comping, but at the same time keep it kind of fresh and still happening by adding some new things. One way that I use this way of listening and also just this focus on comping when I'm trying to get it into my own playing is that I'll listen to a recording like this, and then I'll stop, and then I'll just try to see if I can take sort of the tempo of the song. If it's a song I know, I can actually play the song, but that's not necessarily that important. It's more about just seeing if I can still hear what the song sounds like because I've just listened to it, and then see if I can get that into my playing. So if I'm thinking of the Wynton Kelly accompaniment, then I might be doing... But of course, you don't always want to practice comping just using other recordings. You also just want to make sure that you can actually feel a groove and that you can work with that and play with it. And probably the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing this is that when you practice, and I would say you need to practice this probably with a metronome if you want to judge it, because if you're practicing with a backing track, you can kind of lean on the backing track, and that way you don't have to supply the groove. If you're just practicing with a metronome, then you're the only one that's going to swing, you're the only one that's going to log in with the groove and convey the groove. And that's the easiest way to tell if it's actually working. Try to turn on the metronome so you have an idea about what the tempo is. Don't be afraid to really spend some time listening to the metronome so you really have the tempo. It can be difficult to actually have the tempo. And also try to imagine what kind of groove or what kind of feel that is happening at this tempo. When you hear the song, what is it supposed to sound like? Because you have to have a really strong image of what it is you want to get across when you're comping. So let's just do this with a blues and F. So it's a really medium tempo. It's kind of like heavy medium swing. And then a blues and F could sound something like this. When you're working like this, then you probably want to sort of scale down your playing a little bit, because you don't want to use all the fancy voicings or all the hip reharmonizations. You just want to focus on sticking with the groove and really getting the groove across and playing clear comping. And in general, that's actually what you want to do when you're comping, because when you're playing in a band, then you have to listen to what is happening both with the soloist and the rest of the rhythm section. So that means that you can only use the things that are really part of your system and that you don't have to worry about. As soon as you start thinking about, oh, I need to play this cluster voicing, or I need to play this reharmonization, then you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, and really you're not doing a great job at comping when that happens. For me, I found that it's essential that I have a really strong feeling of the groove, and that I actually train myself to hear a certain groove when I'm playing, and then use that, because that makes what I played work so much better and much more logical. I think it makes a lot of sense that this is the case, but I'm also really curious about how you work on comping. So do you have certain exercises that you do? Do you always work with a backing track? Do you play against real recordings, or do you only work with a metronome? Let me know in the comments, because I think it's an interesting topic, and we don't actually talk too much about how we practice comping, even to the point that I think some people don't even practice it at all. And that's maybe a pity, because it is what we tend to do most of the time when we're playing. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and this is the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. The videos that I publish here every week are on finding some solid methods and good strategies to check out all the interesting things about jazz guitar and improvising. If you like this video and you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. It's because of the support that I'm getting from my patrons that I can keep on publishing videos every week. I'm very grateful for that, and if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and until next week.